So you want to invade Afghanistan. And for the first time in this series, your staff is smiling. At last, they say, a defendant we can afford. No navy, no air force worth the name. No factories, no fleet, no fortress line. A national budget smaller than what some countries in our files spend on marching bands. After Switzerland's mountains, Finland's forests, Australia's oceans, and America's everything, this looks like the discount case. So let me explain how today's audit will work, because it will run backward. In every other case, I priced your plan and predicted your failure. Today, no prediction is required. Your exact plan has already been executed, in full, 3 separate times, by the finest armies of 3 different centuries. The results were written down. So today, we simply read the receipts, all 3. And at the end, I will read you the itemized bill. And the final line item is not a weapon or a mountain. It is the only enemy in this series that cannot be bombed, bribed, or blockaded, and it has never lost. First, the ground, because the ground explains the first thing every invader gets wrong. Afghanistan is mostly wall. The Hindu Kush shoulders through the middle of the country with peaks past 24,000 feet, and between the walls run valleys that connect to each other. The way-locked rooms connect through a handful of passes that close in winter and ambush in summer. There is essentially one paved road that matters, the Great Ring connecting Kabul, Kandahar, Herat, and the north. And beyond it, the country belongs to mules and feet. And here is this episode's structural twist. For the first time in this series, the amphibious chapter of your plan is blank, because Afghanistan has no coastline at all. Celebrate for a moment, because you will spend the rest of the war missing that chapter. A coastline is a door you can force. A landlocked country is a house with no door of your own, which means every bullet, every gallon, every spare part your army consumes must arrive across someone else's territory, by someone else's permission, at someone else's price. Hold that thought. It will reappear on the bill with a dollar figure attached that you will not believe. Now the people, because the second thing every invader gets wrong is assuming there is a country here in the sense your planners understand the word. There are around 40 million Afghans, and they are a patchwork of peoples: Pashtun, Tajik, Hazara, Uzbek, and dozens more, speaking dozens of languages, loyal first to family, valley, and tribe. The largest group lives by a code older than most nations, and 2 of its rules should terrify your planning staff. The first is badal, the obligation of revenge, which means every casualty you inflict is not a subtraction from the enemy. It is a recruitment notice served on his entire bloodline. The second is the law of refuge, the duty to shelter a guest against all comers, a rule so absolute that in 2005, villagers protected a wounded American commando from the very fighters hunting him, at mortal risk to themselves, because he had asked for shelter and the code answers to no army. Now do the strategic arithmetic. A society of self-governing valleys has no capital whose fall ends the war, no government whose surrender binds the villages, no single neck for your hands. Capturing Kabul captures Kabul. The old line says you can rent an Afghan, but you can never buy him. And every empire in today's file signed a lease it mistook for a deed. And here I owe you this episode's honesty clause, because the phrase on your briefing cover, "Graveyard of Empires," is half a myth, and your more literate staff officers know it. Armies have crossed this ground. Alexander the Great cut his way through, at famous cost. You may have heard the quote attributed to him, that Afghanistan is easy to march into and hard to march out of. Like the rifle behind every blade of grass quote in our American file, nobody has ever found a source for it. He probably never said it. The Mongols did not quote anyone. They simply depopulated whole valleys. Timur ruled here. The Mughals ruled from here. So yes, the ground can be taken. But look at how it was held on the only two plans that ever worked: pay it or erase it. Subsidize the tribes and govern nothing, or commit atrocity on a scale that ends the problem by ending the people. A modern occupier can afford neither the shame of the second, nor, as you are about to see, even the price of the first. The graveyard is half myth. The true half is the half you have to pay for. Receipt number 1. Britain, 1839. The greatest empire on earth marches the army of the Indus through the passes. About 21,000 soldiers trailed by 38,000 camp followers and 30,000 camels, because the officers of the Raj did not believe in traveling light. The records say one brigadier required 60 camels for his personal kit alone, and at least one regiment brought its foxhounds. Entry is easy. It is always easy. Kabul falls, a compliant king is installed, and the garrison settles in for cricket and horse racing. 2 years later, the city rises. The British envoy is shot dead at the negotiating table. And in January of 1842, the garrison cuts a deal for safe passage and marches out for Jalalabad, 90 miles away, 16,500 soldiers and civilians, walking into knee-deep snow and the gauntlet of the passes. The column lasts a week. The last survivors of the 44th Regiment of Foot, about 20 officers and 45 men, make their stand on a frozen hill at Gandamak. And on the 13th of January, the watchers on the walls of Jalalabad see a single rider swaying toward the gate on a dying pony. Dr. William Bryden, an army surgeon, part of his skull sheared away, alive the story goes, because a rolled-up magazine stuffed in his hat took the sword cut. Of the 16,500, he is the only member of the army to ride in that day. A handful of hostages were ransomed back long after. Britain then does what wounded empires do. An army of retribution storms back the same year, burns Kabul's Great Bazaar, and then, read this part twice, leaves. Even the victory was a withdrawal. Britain came back for a rematch in 1878 and had a brigade destroyed at Maiwand, and came back again in 1919 and left again. And after 80 years and 3 wars, the sum of British conquest in Afghanistan was a painting of one exhausted man on one dying horse. Receipt 1, filed. Receipt number 2, and this one begins with the finest forced entry in the file. Christmas week, 1979. Soviet airborne troops are already inside Kabul when Spetsnaz commandos storm the presidential palace on the evening of December 27th, and the president of Afghanistan is dead by dinner, replaced by a man who arrived in Moscow's luggage. As a door kick, it is flawless. The Politburo's plan measures the stay in months. The stay lasts 9 years and 50 days. At its peak, the Soviet 40th Army numbers around 115,000 men, and it wins nearly every battle it can find, which is the problem, because the war declines to hold still and be found. The Soviets rule the cities and the ring road by day. The other Afghanistan, the 80% that is valley and wall, never submits. 9 separate offensives grind into the Panjshir Valley against a commander named Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Lion of Panjshir, and 9 times the valley closes behind them like water. Meanwhile, the sanctuary problem, the one that will rhyme through every receipt, sits just across the border, where fighters rest, refit, and collect a river of money and weapons flowing through Pakistan from America, Saudi Arabia, and half the world. In September of 1986, the river delivers something new, and by the usual account, the first volley of American Stingers near Jalalabad drops 3 helicopter gunships in minutes. Historians still argue how much the Stingers changed the war's outcome. Nobody argues what they did to the war's altitude, because the gunships climbed out of range and the low sky, the one advantage machines had in this country, was rented back to the defenders. In Moscow, the new General Secretary, Gorbachev, stands before his own party Congress and calls the war a bleeding wound. The wound's ledger, when it closes on February 15, 1989, reads like this. By Moscow's own count, around 15,000 Soviet soldiers dead, and post-Soviet estimates run considerably higher, with 333 helicopters destroyed. On the other side of the ledger, a horror. Estimates run from 1 to 2 million Afghan dead, and 5 to 6 million refugees. At that time, the largest refugee population on Earth. The last Soviet soldier to leave is the commanding general himself, Boris Gromov, walking alone across the Friendship Bridge. And here is the detail this court cannot improve upon. The war outlived the men who ordered it. Brezhnev, who approved the invasion, died in office. His successor, Andropov, died in office. His successor, Chernenko, died in office. 3 rulers of a superpower died of natural causes while their short Afghan operation was still running. Within 3 years of the withdrawal, the Soviet Union itself ceased to exist. Historians still argue over how much Afghanistan contributed to that collapse. The men who fought there tend to have an opinion. Receipt 2, filed. Receipt number 3, and it opens with the most brilliant entry of the 3, which is precisely what makes it the most instructive. October 2001, weeks after the September 11th attacks. America does not send an army. It sends a few hundred people, CIA officers with suitcases of cash and Green Beret teams, some of them riding to war on horseback beside Afghan allies, with the entire weight of American air power overhead. 5 weeks later, Kabul falls. It is the fastest, cheapest, most successful invasion of Afghanistan ever conducted. And if the story ended there, this episode would not exist. The story runs 19 more years. It becomes the longest war in American history, spanning 4 presidents. At the surge, it involves about 100,000 American troops, 130,000 with allies, which sounds enormous until you meet the Bill's garrison line in a moment. By the accounting of Brown University's costs of war project, it consumes about $2.3 trillion, which averages out to roughly $300 million a day, every day, for 2 decades. And it takes lives on every side of the ledger. About 2,400 American service members, more than 20,000 wounded, nearly 4,000 American contractors, over 1,100 Allied troops, at least 66,000 Afghan soldiers and police, and civilian deaths counted in the tens of thousands. The enemy across all those years is an insurgency whose entire annual budget, from opium and taxes and donors, is less than what the coalition spends in a single week. Then comes the ending, and it is the fastest chapter in the file. A withdrawal deal is signed. In August of 2021, the provincial capitals fall in about 10 days. Bagram, the mightiest airbase in the country, is abandoned overnight. By the Afghan commander's own account, he learned the Americans were gone hours after the fact. Roughly $7 billion of American-supplied equipment ends up in Taliban hands, by the American Inspector General's own accounting. The world watches the airport scenes from Kabul as more than 120,000 people are flown out. And during that evacuation, a suicide bombing at the airport gate kills 13 American service members and around 170 Afghans. 20 years to the season after it began, the flag that fell in 5 weeks is back over Kabul. Receipt 3, filed. 3 receipts, 3 centuries. Now read what rhymes, because the rhyme is the audit. Every invasion of Afghanistan enters easily. The door has never once been locked. Every invader wins the battles. The British won theirs. The Soviets won theirs. The Americans barely lost a firefight of consequence in 20 years. Every invader discovers there is no center to capture, no surrender that binds the valleys. Every invader faces a sanctuary. Next door it dare not enter, the hills in 1842, Pakistan in both modern receipts, 1,600 miles of mountain border, and sealing it, means invading a nation of 240 million with nuclear weapons, which is our American case's Canada problem wearing a turban of uranium. The war you must win first is bigger than the war you came to fight, and every invader ignores the same arithmetic. The standard garrison doctrine, 20 to 25 soldiers per 1,000 people, prices the occupation of 40 million Afghans at 800,000 to 1 million troops. The British never came close. The Soviets peaked at 1/10 of it. The Americans at 1/10 of it. Every superpower tried to hold Afghanistan with 1/10 of the textbook minimum and then expressed surprise that the textbook was right. So, the bill, line 1, the entry fee, and it is suspiciously reasonable, the cheapest in this series, because Afghanistan does not charge admission. It charges rent, in blood, indefinitely, and you do not get to write the exit clause. You are not buying a country. You are subscribing to a war. Line 2, the supply ransom. Landlocked means every gallon arrives by the neighbor's grace. Congressional testimony in 2009 priced fuel delivered to remote outposts at up to $400 a gallon. And when Pakistan shut the border crossings for 7 months, a superpowers war effort queued at a toll booth. Line 3, the garrison you will not pay for. 1 million troops by doctrine, in terrain that eats brigades forever. Bring 1/10 like everyone else, and you have pre-ordered the ending. Line 4, the sanctuary tax, the prerequisite war against a nuclear neighbor that no invader has ever been willing to price. Line 5, the prize, and this is our Swiss verdict at altitude. Geologists have valued the minerals under these mountains at $1 trillion. The lithium memos even called it a future Saudi Arabia. Every mining company that read the security section valued it at 0, because ore without roads, rails, and 30 years of peace is just heavy rock. And your invasion is the reason the 30 years never start. And now the final line item, the undefeated enemy I promised, which is time itself. Your war costs $300 million a day. The defender's costs almost nothing. Your public counts the days. The defender does not own a number that high. Your exit date is real, printed, and known to every shopkeeper in Kabul. Theirs does not exist. 3 Soviet rulers died of old age while their quick operation was still running. 4 American presidents handed it to each other like an unpaid invoice. As a captured fighter supposedly told his interrogators, "You have the watches, but we have the time." Afghanistan does not defeat armies. It outlasts governments, and it has never once failed to. The verdict of this court: invasion of Afghanistan denied. Not because the defenders are supermen, and not because the mountains are magic. Denied because this is the only case in our files that required no projection at all. The verdict was stamped by London in 1842, initialed by Moscow in 1989, and countersigned by Washington in 2021, in a file that begins with one man on a dying horse and ends with the richest military in history queuing for the airport. This court has merely read it aloud. Case number 5, closed. And now your staff brings the next folder, looking pleased with themselves because the next defendant seems to solve everything. An island, so the approach is short. Rich, so the prize is real. And here is the remarkable part. In its entire recorded history, it has never once been successfully invaded. The last 2 armadas that tried were annihilated by storms so perfectly timed that the defenders declared the wind itself divine and gave it a name you already know. And when the greatest military power on Earth planned attempt number 3 in 1945, it priced the landing at up to 1 million of its own casualties, minted the medals for them in advance, and chose a different weapon instead. That case file opens next. If you want your invasion plans rejected properly, hit subscribe, because the Iron Verdict Court is now in session.